Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
I feel like freedom.
KBLA Talk 1580 is pleased to partner with the Empowerment Congress, the Gathering Spot, the Institute for Nonviolence, and Days of Dialogue for a Juneteenth program called State of the Freed to educate fellow citizens about the significance of the holiday and efforts around reparations for descendants of slaves living in California. Program participants include California Reparations Task Force member Assemblyman Reginald Jones Sawyer and State Senator Steve Bradford, along with KBLA's own Dominique DePrima, Ariva Martin, Tavis Smiley, and many more. It all happens Saturday, June 10th, and you could be selected to attend this special invitation-only Juneteenth event along with Dominique, Ariva, and Tavis. All you have to do is go to the KBLA 1580 website, click on the Juneteenth State of the Freed icon on the homepage, and register to win entrance into this empowering affair. Or you can watch the live stream of this special Juneteenth event by going to www.empowermentcongress.org/Juneteenth. But head to the KBLA 1580 website right now for your chance to join us live on site Saturday, June 10th for the State of the Freed. This is a Juneteenth community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
I feel like freedom. 1, 2, 3, yeah. Ha, ha. I'm gonna try to keep it coming. Things ain't always smooth, but I'll be alright long as I can find the groove. Yes, I will. Yeah. Somehow I know that I can make it. You seem to like my style. Don't you worry, I'm gonna be around a while. Yes, I will. I'm just happy to see you talk to me back in style again.
Live from Leimert Park, USA, I'm Tavis Smiley, and you're listening to KBLA Talk 1580. So glad to see you and me back in stride again. Our phone number, 1-800-920-1580, 1-800-920-1580. All of our socials can be found at KBLA 1580. That's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube, everything at KBLA 1580. Let me also invite you right now to download our app at KBLA 1580. Download the app and listen to us live anywhere in the world, but only by downloading our app right now at KBLA 1580. Should you miss us any day in real time, check out the podcast of our program by going to the app, the website, Anchor, Spotify, Apple, so many places to go and get the podcast of this program and listen at your leisure should you miss us any day in real time. But I am delighted to have you along live with us today for the next 3 hours. You can also watch the live stream of this program by tapping on the KBLA TV icon on our app or by going to our YouTube channel. Let me also invite you to follow me on Facebook and Twitter. Facebook and Instagram, I should say, at The Real Tavis Smiley, and get Twitter updates at Tavis Smiley. Another great show on tap for you today. Before I get into the rundown for today's show, a quick reminder of our exclusive talk radio interview tomorrow morning with Dr. Cornel West. You've heard his announcement that he is running for president of these United States on the People's Party ticket, People's Party platform. And I've got a lot of questions for Dr. West. As I said yesterday, I've known him for 30-plus years, and I did not see this coming. He did not consult me on this. Many of his other friends were in the dark as well, as I've discovered over the last 24 hours or so. So he kept this decision pretty close to his chest, close to his vest, if you will. And so I've got a lot of questions for my friend and brother tomorrow, including why he's running and what he hopes to accomplish, and does he think he can win, and what about the criticism that I know he's going to get, that Ralph Nader criticism for pulling votes away from the established Democratic candidate and president and vice president, Biden and Harris, pulling votes away from them. I know he's going to catch it for that. I've said many times that Dr. West has repeatedly said to me over the years, Brother Tavis, you'd more likely find me in the crack house than the White House. And yet at the age of 70, he's decided to run for the White House. All kinds of questions for Cornel West, who will join us tomorrow live in studio, 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. Pacific time, right here on KBLA Talk 1580. Looking forward again to that conversation with Dr. West tomorrow morning. But again, a great show on tap for you today. In our second hour, 2 conversations. Up first,
I'm Chef Elisa Reynolds, and I'm hitting the road searching for soul food.
I wanna see you bring the heat.
I'm tracing soul food's roots from Mississippi to South Africa, y'all. Mamma mia! You can't even describe it. You're like, humana. I'm on a mission. We're all connected through food. This is history on a plate, and I'm bringing you along for the journey. Italy, Peru, Jamaica. I'm going around the globe, and we're searching for soul food. Let's get it.
Let's go picture the heat.
So up first in hour 2, the star of the hit Hulu series, Searching for Soul Food, Chef Elisa Reynolds. On the B side of hour 2, a conversation with the co-owner of Malik Books and the co-author of The Heart of a Black Man, Inspiring Stories of Triumph and Resilience. Malik Muhammad joins us today on the backside of hour 2. In our third hour, as we celebrate Black Music Month, we'll talk with the esteemed cultural anthropologist and ethnomusicologist, Dr. Kyra D. Grant, about whether Black music and its expressions are still regarded as a powerful force for empowerment and inclusion, or a perpetuation of inequality and cultural appropriation. And speaking of June as Black Music Month, every day on this program, we are featuring a particular artist whose music we play all 3 hours of the program. Today's artist is Prince, because today, June 7th, is Prince's birthday. So as we move forward today, all 3 hours, you'll be hearing some of the best of the artist formerly known and known once again and forever as Prince. I look forward to our celebration of his rich musical legacy all 3 hours of today's conversation, today's program, I should say. We should commence, though, today's program in a conversation about the personalization of American capitalism with Professor David Schultz. The personalization of American capitalism. Let me break it down for you. In a recent release by Forbes of the richest individuals in the world, we see a stark reminder of the concentration of wealth, particularly in these United States. Topping the list is Bernard Arnault of LVMH with a staggering net worth of $211 billion. However, what is even more striking is that the majority of the top 10 wealthiest individuals are located in the U.S. You hear that? The majority of the top 10 richest folk in the world are located in this country with a combined wealth of $786 billion. 786. In fact, out of the 25 richest individuals globally, 17 are Americans. While some may perceive this accumulation of wealth as a testament to the American dream, the connection between economic power and political influence raises important questions, I think, about the fairness and viability of our democratic system. The top billionaires in this country don't just possess vast economic resources, but they also wield considerable clout to protect and further their financial interests. And so, when we come forward, we'll commence our conversation about the personalization of American capitalism with Hamline University Professor of Political Science, David Schultz, on KBLA Talk 1580.
You're listening to Tavis Smiley, recipient of the prestigious Freedom of Speech Award at Talkers 2023. More of Tavis when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
Did you know that all City of LA renters have rights? Check out these 3 facts. Residential tenants can't be evicted without reason or just cause. Eviction protection still exists for unpaid COVID-19 rental debt due before March 31st, 2023. And you have 5 days to respond to an eviction notice. 5 days. Many Angelinos may be at risk of losing their home, and that's why we want you to know your rights. Learn more at housing.lacity.org. Be informed, be protected, be at home.
If you're a business owner or lead a nonprofit that's between 26 and 49 employees, please listen. Lendistry is proud to announce a new program whereby small businesses and nonprofits may qualify for reimbursement of COVID sick leave expenses incurred in 2021 or 2022. This program is administered by the California Office of the Small Business Advocate. Eligibility criteria apply and funding is limited. For more information, visit covidpaidsick.com. If you're a business owner or lead a nonprofit that has between 26 and 49 employees, please listen. Lendistry is proud to announce a new program whereby small businesses and nonprofits may qualify for reimbursement of COVID sick leave expenses incurred in 2021 or 2022. This program is administered by the California Office of the Small Business Advocate. For more information, visit covidpaidsick.com.
Did you know that feeling sluggish or weighed down could be signs that your digestive system isn't working at its best? But taking Metamucil every day can help. Metamucil supports your daily digestive health using a special plant-based fiber called psyllium. Psyllium works by forming a gel in your digestive system to trap and remove the waste that weighs you down. Metamucil's gelling action also helps to promote heart health and slows down sugar absorption to promote healthy blood sugar levels. Start feeling lighter and more energetic by taking Metamucil every day.
With no fees or minimums and no overdraft fees, banking with Capital One is the easiest decision in the history of decisions. Even easier than choosing Slash to be in your band.
Next up for lead guitar. You're in.
Cool. Yep, even easier than that. With no fees or minimums and no overdraft fees, is it even a decision? That's banking reimagined. What's in your wallet?
Terms apply. See CapitalOne.com/bank for details. Capital One N.A. member FDIC.
You're listening to Tavis Smiley, recipient of the highest honor in the talk radio industry, the coveted Freedom of Speech Award. At Talkers 2023, let's get back to more of Tavis right now on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Tavis Smiley. That's Prince. And today, he would have turned 65. We think of 65 as retirement age, but knowing Prince as I did, he would have just been getting started at the age of 65. But hard to believe that where he's still with us, Prince will be turning 65 years young today. And so because June is Black Music Month, we are celebrating the music of African-American artists and our grand contribution to the soundtrack of our lives. And as I said yesterday, America would not have been America without the contributions of black folk, and there really is no playlist. If you take all the black artists off of the soundtrack of our lives, and so we celebrate today, all 3 hours, some of the best music from Prince we will feature. Prince used to always say in the middle of his concert, I've told this story many times, if you've seen him, you know this, he'd be in the middle of his show and just kind of pause for a second and look at the audience and say to the audience, what should I play next? And tens of thousands of folks started yelling out different songs they wanted to hear. And he let it ride for a second and grabbed the mic and say, so many hits, so little time. So in 3 hours, we can't even do justice to his corpus. But we'll be playing Prince all 3 hours of today's program, celebrating what would have been his 65th birthday. Prince, of course, from Minneapolis, Paisley Park, specifically located in Chanhassen, Minnesota. And it just so happens that our guest right now joins us on the line from Minneapolis. David Schultz is a Hamline University professor of political science, and I'm honored to have him back on this program. Professor Schultz, how are you today, sir?
I am doing great, and we are celebrating his legacy today in Minneapolis, St. Paul. And I think there's some events going out at out in Chanhassen. I'm not sure, but he certainly is a hero in this area.
No, he is a hero around the world. People loved him, and I've thought many times, as close as he and I were for almost 30 years, I don't know that he knew how beloved he really was. I mean, he passed away I was just so moved by the tributes to him all around the world. People turning buildings purple and purple flags and purple everything. And so I've often wondered whether or not he knew how beloved he really was, what he might have made of all that happened and has happened, and the love that still persists for him even after his untimely and tragic death. But we celebrate today the life and legacy of Prince Rogers Nelson, the pride of Minneapolis, Minnesota. Let me go to Minneapolis right now and get back to Professor David Schultz about the personalization of American capitalism. I saw a piece that you wrote about this, a brilliant piece, and I wanted to have you back on to sort of interrogate it. But before I ask any specific questions, tell me why you wrote this piece and what you wanted us to wrestle with.
Well, I've always been interested in the problem that, that we have so much wealth in this country, but we have so many poor people in this country, and to try to understand the relationship between the two. And one of the things that I was flipping through, I can't remember where I was, I saw something where Forbes had their list of the richest people in the world, and I started looking at it and thinking about it that, we worship in this country. I don't know why. We worship really rich people. We have over time. And I thought to myself, the more super rich people we have, that also means what? The more poor people we're going to have. There's a relationship between the two. And there's a relationship between this idea of saying that there's this American dream where some people hit not just become millionaires, but the billionaires or something like that. And so I wanted to look at how rich are some people in America and sort of put that, off to the side and say, what do we know about the richest people in America, richest people in the world, and then what does it say about who they are? And what I came up with, and the title of the piece was called 10 Men, 1 Trillion, and the Personalization of American Capitalism. And I just want people to reflect on this for a second. There are 10 people, 10 individuals in America who collectively are worth $1 trillion. That is more money than the bottom 50%, the rest of the 50% of America has. Just think about that. 10 people, $1 trillion, and what does it say about America?
Let me start with this. You said a moment ago that the more rich people we have, the more poor people we're going to have. Make that connection for me. Why is it that just because there are more rich people, there are automatically more poor people?
Well, what's going to happen? And remember, at the end of the day, how do rich people make their money? They make their money off of the workers. And the more money that they can sort of extract from workers, that means the less money that the workers have, the more money the really rich have. That's the real simple relationship here. I don't know. If I were in the classroom, I could probably write some kind of an equation on the board. I don't know how to write it out right now. But basically, they are super rich because what? They earn their money off of the backs of the working class in America. They earn their money by what? Not paying taxes, by paying minimum wage, if not less than minimum wage. They made their money by forcing people, in many cases, to work still in unfair labor conditions. At the end of the day, the reason why we have a small concentration of super rich people is because what? We have a political economic system that favors their interests. And the part that's even scarier, it's not just that they have made their money, but they're now in a position to convert, I'll use the phrase, their economic, the resources from their economic marketplace can now be used to help them in the political marketplace. They lobby to make sure that taxes don't go up. They lobby to get special breaks for their organizations. They use their economic resources as political tools to stay in place, to keep the rest of us down. That's the connection we want to make in terms of thinking about it here.
We're going to spend time in this hour, of course. That's why we're calling it the personalization of American capitalism. We'll talk about the impact that their wealth allows them to have on our body politic, and how the rest of us in this demos are subject to that and oftentimes punished by that. But let me stay with this notion that you raised a moment ago, that the system favors their interest. I'm not naive in addressing this issue, but tell me more about the ways in which our system of governance, the way we do things, our capitalist system, how does it favor their interest?
Well, I want to put together capitalism and our supposed democracy at the same time, because they really sort of work together in terms of it. But basically, the structure is, well, at least on the surface, it may look like we have a democracy, but we live in a political system that allows people to convert their economic resources into political resources. So that's the first thing right off the bat. So as people get rich, they then lobby against what? Higher taxes to redistribute. They lobby against changing, let's say, minimum wage laws. They lobby against healthcare reform. They use their resources to prevent any kind of political changes in the system. So that's sort of the core of it. But when I talk to my students, I have to take them back to the beginning. And on the very first day of class, I write on the board a word. The word is WASP, WASP $M21. And I kid and I say, I pronounce it WASP 21. And I say, the people who created this country were white Anglo-Saxon Protestant males who were rich at least age 20, if not older. I said, that's the profile of the people who created our political system. And then I talk about our voting laws. I talk about who votes. I talk about who serves in Congress, the profiles of our elected officials, the profiles of the major economic elites. And I say to them, my students, is it by coincidence or by structural design that the same people or the profile of the people who created this country look almost identical to those who are running it today? And I'm pushing the argument here, and I'm pushing my audience here to think about this. We want to say that we have a system that's captured by we the people, the first three words of the Constitution, but in some sense, it's a constitution, it's a political economic system that seems to replicate itself to favor the same type of people over time. It was, for many years, it was about the voting issue. And it's also about capitalism and about rich people being able to use their resources, again, to keep themselves in power. That's the system. Think of American capitalist democracy as what? A machine that replicates itself and reproduces the outputs to keep certain people in power at the expense of others.
I argue, we argue, and by we I mean Cornel West. I mentioned Dr. West as our guest tomorrow in hour one about his announcement that he's running for president of these United States. Dr. West and I have been friends for over 30 years and have done a lot of things together, including writing a New York Times bestselling book called The Rich and the Rest of Us, a Poverty Manifesto. We wrote that book some years ago. It shot straight to the top of the New York Times list. I'm grateful for that, as is Dr. West all these years later. Again, it's called The Rich and the Rest of Us. And in that book, we talk about a couple of things. We talk about the fact that America, in many respects, Professor Schultz, was a corporation before it was a country. If I had time, I'd unpack that. But in many ways, America was a corporation before it was a country. And we talk, of course, about this gap between the rich and the rest of us. That's why it's called The Rich and the Rest of Us. This gap continues to grow. Well, we argue in the book that you can't talk about poverty without also talking about income inequality and economic immobility. Those things go together. Poverty, income inequality, and economic immobility. I want to ask you about the latter two. We've talked about the fact that the more rich people there are, the more poor people they are. But how do you juxtapose, how do you square the fact that as these persons have gotten richer over the years, we are wrestling ever more so with income inequality and economic immobility?
Well, they actually all go together at this point. I mean, there's this great myth. There's this wonderful myth that's really sort of been a core to America. The idea of what? Anybody can grow up to be a millionaire, whatever metaphor. Anybody can, the American dream or something like that, the economic mobility argument, whatever, again, or anybody can hit a home run, et cetera, et cetera. And what I point out, and I'm not the first to do this, there's incredible studies and other studies to do this. If we compare the United States to our peers, and what I mean by our peers, let's say France, Germany, Sweden, other countries like that, there's a standard index called the Gini index that measures inequality. We have, since the 1970s, we have fallen from a somewhat unequal to the most unequal democracy, if we call it that, in the world. And with that, also, our social mobility, the ability, and I'll measure it one way, the ability of people in the bottom fifth to hit the home run to get to the top fifth, or the people in the top fifth to strike out and go to the bottom, if I can use a baseball metaphor. Social mobility has largely frozen in the United States. And again, among major democracies, only England, which is a monarchy still is a monarchy, has worse social mobility. So this idea that we're the land of social mobility, anybody can rise to the top, that we're a country of equality, largely the data, this is census data, this is Forbes data, et cetera, largely refutes all of this. We've really, especially since the 1970s, have economically stagnated. And exactly as the title of your book points out here, there is the few and then there's the rest of us.
Here, again, no naivete here. But let me go back to something else you raised earlier, because it occurs to me I want to link a few things up here. Why is it that you think in this country, unlike any place else in the world, we worship the rich? I've traveled all around the world, as I'm sure you have as well, and there are rich people in every country, but there's no place where the rich are worshipped, and I'm using that word deliberately, the way they are in this country. Why is that?
That is a really good question, because I point out the fact that in a previous era, it was what? It was the Vanderbilts, the DuPonts, the Carnegies, the Rockefellers, the Kennedys, et cetera. Maybe that's our American aristocracy. I don't know. But you're right. We so much worship them. We think that they're the embodiment of the American dream, or maybe since we don't have a kingdom here, this is our economic kingdom or something. But it's so fascinating that we worship it. And I think it's even more interesting is that at the time, these are like the old, like the Vanderbilts and all that. They're the robber barons. They're running the sweat factories. They're treating workers horribly. And then what happens is that the Rockefellers and all that die. They leave their money to charity. And now we suddenly worship them even more. And we beg for their money because we think they're such benevolent people. No, remember how they got their money. They got their money from robbing from the poor, from people of color.
And what's your indictment then, to your point, your brilliant point now, what's your indictment, Professor Schultz, of worker wages being stagnant, but CEO salaries have gone through the roof?
Well, exactly, hit it on a score here. I'm trying to think about what is it like? Something like the ratio is like 400 or 500 to 1.
To 1, exactly.
Yeah, something like that in terms of CEO salary to workers. Minimum wage is largely stagnant, hasn't changed very much in many, many years. Think about it. One of my teachers said it really once many years ago when someone said, "Why is labor so weak in the United States?" And his answer was, because capitalism is so powerful. And I thought that was a really good answer there. Is that, again, it's the ability of economic elites to say, we got to where we are not going to let anybody take it away from us, and we are going to do our best to make sure that we have a constant supply chain of workers, low paid, that we don't have a good welfare state in here to take care of people if they get sick or ill or something like that. We're going to make sure that people are what? Hungry and desperate to work.
Yeah. When we come forward after news, traffic, and sports, I want to come to the sweet spot, as it were, or the troubling spot, depending on how one looks at it, of this conversation about the personalization of American capitalism. And that is the impact that their wealth allows them to have on our experiment in democracy. The impact that their money allows them to have on this experiment in democracy. We'll get to that when we come forward, talking with David Schultz, Hamline University professor of political science, who you're listening to right now on KBLA Talk 1580.
Be sure to like and follow Tavis Smiley at The Real Tavis Smiley and get Twitter updates at Tavis Smiley. The conversation continues when we come forward.
We thank you for joining us on a Wednesday morning. It is the 7th day of June. I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. The South Carolina Supreme Court is expediting their review of an abortion ban. The measure was met with a lawsuit filed by abortion providers when it was signed into law last month. A lower court blocked the ban for now, but oral arguments before the state's highest court are now set for June 27. There's a settlement in the civil rape lawsuit against African-American actor Cuba Gooding Jr. The settlement came in Tuesday, just as a trial was about to begin in Manhattan federal court. 55-year-old Gooding Jr. was charged with sexually assaulting a woman 10 years ago in a Greenwich Village hotel room. He has maintained the encounter was consensual. Her attorney declined to comment. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network and BINnews.com.
Rush hour is technically over, but it's hard to tell. That Century Freeway near LA's just nasty. 105 westbound at the 405, a stalled car taking up the carpool lane and the two left lanes, and you're pretty much out of business back at Lakewood Boulevard. Crash in Carson, 91 westbound at Main Street. Two cars have taken away the fast lanes. That 91 west is no-go from Bloomfield Avenue. And coming out of the valley, the 405 southbound stop and go from Sherman Way to Montana Avenue.
Life is uncertain. It's okay to feel stressed, anxious, worried, or frustrated. CalHope can help. Access CalHope's free and secure mental health resources. Call 833-317-4673 or live chat at calhope.org.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
There's been some chatter the past few days that the Miami Heat will have Tyler Hero for Game 3 tonight in the NBA Finals. The Heat confirmed that Hero will not play tonight against the Denver Nuggets. Hero, the Heat's number 3 scorer, is still recovering from surgery to repair 2 broken bones in his right hand. He was injured in the first round in April against Milwaukee. The Heat made it to the finals without Hero. They can afford to wait a little while longer to bring him back. Game 3 tonight in Miami at 5:30 on ABC. Cincinnati gets 3 in the bottom of the 9th for a comeback win against the Dodgers. Buffalo Bills defensive back DeMar Hamlin practiced with the team on Tuesday in off-season workouts. First full practice for Hamlin since his cardiac arrest on January 2nd in a Monday night game. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Race, culture wars, political turf battles, criminal justice and injustice, the courts. These are the conversations you won't hear elsewhere. My guests are leading journalists, celebrities, and sports figures, elected leaders, and influencers. They aren't afraid to get into it and say the quiet part out loud. With Ariva Martin in real time, your commute just became the most engaging part of your day. Tune in weekdays from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. or find us on YouTube. Ariva Martin in real time, when you want it straight, no chaser.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
Everybody in the house, make some noise!
Is there a better day of the year to celebrate the anniversary of the only unapologetically progressive talk station west of the Mississippi, focused on issues that impact the black community?
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
We think not. A station that amplifies black voices like yours with hosts and guests who look and sound like you. Celebrating our second anniversary on Juneteenth. We're KBLA Talk 1580. And you ain't seen nothing yet. This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
The Heart of a Black Man, inspiring stories of triumph and resilience. Co-authored by 30 black men. Message of hope and empowerment. RSVP today at MalikBooks.com. Saturday, June 10th at 5 p.m. Westfield Culver City Mall. Come out and meet and greet 4 black men sharing their personal stories. Also, meet newly published co-author Malik Muhammad. Founder of Malik Books and book activist will be discussing and signing his chapter, From Devastation to Elevation. Saturday, June 10th at 5 p.m. RSVP today at MalikBooks.com. Westfield Culver City Mall. Come meet and greet co-authors Dr. Rael Sims, Cornell Ward, and Kendry Berry. Meet and greet book signing event, The Heart of a Black Man, at MalikBooks.com.
Broadcasting live from Leimert Park, USA. Welcome back to your home for unapologetically progressive radio. KBLA Talk 1580.
I get delirious whenever you're near. Lose all self-control, baby, just can't steal. Wheels get locked in place. Stupid look on my face. It comes to making a pass, pretty mama. Just can't win a race, 'cause I get delirious.
June is Black Music Month, and we're celebrating a different artist every single day. And as you've already heard, today that artist is Prince, because today is his birthday, June the 7th. It's also my trainer's birthday. Terry Claiborne is celebrating his birthday on June 7th, as is my brother Maury. So happy birthday to Prince, who would have been 65 today, to Terry Claiborne, and to my brother Maury. Happy birthday to all of y'all. And everybody else celebrating birthdays on June 7th. But as we celebrate a different artist every day, Prince was the obvious choice today, given what this day means. I miss him dearly, but his music will forever live on. Speaking of Minneapolis, our guest in this hour is on the line from Minneapolis because he's a professor at Hamline University, professor of political science at this university that is based in Minnesota. And so it wasn't planned that way that our guest in the first hour would be from Minneapolis, but it all works out and it's a beautiful thing. We're talking in this hour, in case again you've just tuned in, about the personalization of American capitalism, talking about the fact that there are 17 of the 25 richest folk in the world who live in this country. Though 10 of those 17 have a combined wealth of $786 billion. The numbers are staggering. And anybody hating on people for getting rich, trust me, I've been rich and poor in my life, and rich is better. Nobody's hating on the rich. But at the same time, what does it mean that there are just a handful of people who control so much wealth in this country? And that wealth allows them to have an outsized impact on our experiment in democracy. And that's what I want to talk about right now with our guest, David Schultz. Professor Schultz, let me go straight to that. And before I get to the impact they can have on democracy, it seems to me you can't talk about that without talking about the ways in which our system, as you put earlier, it plays to their interests and allows them to spend an inordinate amount of their money on our political process. Put another way, it seems to me that you have to condemn, as I suspect you will, the money in our politics. Somebody once said that money is the mother's milk of politics. I put it this way: Washington is bought and bossed by big money and big business. So before we get to them and how they use their money to influence this experiment in democracy, what about the systems and the structures and the policies and the Supreme Court decisions that allow them to do this in the first place?
You're absolutely correct. And I'm going to start with the most critical one, which is the fact that the Supreme Court has ruled, especially the Roberts Court, that money is a form of protected speech. And why that's important is because this is a court, even though we never really well-regulated money in our political system, it has essentially deregulated it. It has said that people have the right to spend as much money as they want, not just for the purposes of, let's say, trying to influence the campaigns and elections, but also can spend, which I think is even more critical, unlimited amounts of money to be able to try to lobby and influence the decision-making process. It's not just lobbying Congress. It's lobbying all the administrative agencies that make all the critical rules. It's lobbying at the state level. It's lobbying at the local level. I mean, we I mean, we have an incredibly small number of people who are able to use their resources to hire lawyers, to hire lobbyists, to hire supposed experts, who will do studies that will claim and say, I don't know, tobacco doesn't hurt people, or whatever, or polluting the atmosphere isn't a big deal, or something like that. But my point being is that we have multiple sources where, again, people can convert economic resources over into political resources, and the Supreme Court has essentially said that is a form of protected speech. That's one way. But the other story, and you probably have talked about this several other times, is over time, in terms of how the Supreme Court has not just this current one, but past ones, has upheld what? Laws that make it harder to vote for people. We have laws in place in this country that makes it difficult for ex-felons to be able to vote. In some cases, permanently disenfranchising them. I mean, we can go into a long history about how, despite the fact that after the Civil War we had the 15th Amendment adopted, there was a concerted effort during Jim Crow and beyond to keep people of color from being able to vote. And the courts have given legal sanction to all of this. And so that's what we want to combine together here, is how the courts, the law, Congress has put in place laws that keep people down.
How would you respond to the criticism, and this is legitimate, I've heard it many times before, that there is class warfare in this country, but we are the ones, David Schultz and Tavis Smiley, are the ones waging that class warfare? The argument goes like this, that pieces like the one you've written that we're talking about today, 10 Men, $1 trillion, and the personalization of American capitalism, that's your powerful piece that made me want to get you on the phone and have you on this program once again. Your piece is class warfare. This conversation is class warfare. Tavis Smiley's commentary is class warfare, but it's class warfare against the rich in this country.
I'm going to reverse it and say there is a class war going on in this country, and one side is fighting. That is the rich. They have understood that in order to stay rich, they have to wage the fight. They have to wage the battle. And they have been doing it, let's say, I think throughout American history they've done it, but I'm just going to say specifically since the 1970s. And so I would argue the fact that they've waged war against what? Against unions in the United States. They've waged war against, let us say, collective bargaining. They're trying to make it harder to vote. They're trying to make it more difficult for average people to be able to run for office, third-party candidates. I know you're going to be talking to Cornel West tomorrow about this, making it more difficult for third-party challenges to occur. So I would argue that you're right. There is class warfare going on. There is only one class fighting, except what? It's the rich that's doing the fight, and most of the rest of us have not fought back. Most of the rest of us are worried about what? On a day-to-day basis, what? Getting up, going to work, making a paycheck, getting our kids off to school. I mean, most of us just don't have the the leisure or the resources to fight back, and it's exhausting. For many of your listeners out there, they're probably exhausted at the end of the day of working, maybe doing 2 shifts or something like that, and I'll say to them, go off and do some political stuff. I like to tell the story that back in 2008, I was working at a radio or television station. It was the year Obama was running for president, first time, and they kept us all in that night. They had a catered meal because they wanted all the reporters and everybody was working there staying. So I was talking to this woman, who was the caterer, and she was a Hispanic woman. And I said to her, "Are you excited about the election?" She goes, "Yes, I love Barack Obama. I want to vote for him." And I said, "Did you vote yet?" And she says, "No, I can't vote." And I said, "Why?" And she said that if I were to take time off to go vote, that means I don't get a paycheck, and I've got 3 kids home I've got to worry about. And she said, "So what do I do? Put food on the table, or do I go vote?" That captures the story that I want to tell right there. That at the end of the day, many people have to worry about trying to put food on the table, and don't have the time or the energy to fight back.
Yeah. As you were talking, and I'm glad you shared that story. It's an arresting story, and there are many persons in this country who fall into that category. Just can't take time off to go vote. say nothing of what you mentioned earlier of all the ways in which our political process now is trying to make it, certainly the political right, trying to make it more difficult to vote. Even if you could take time off to go vote, they want to make it more difficult for you to exercise that precious right. But I was thinking as you were talking about the writer's strike here in L.A. right now, that's what that writer's strike is all about. These corporations are making more money. They are minting money. These Hollywood institutions, Netflix and beyond, they're all minting money, but the writers are being poorly paid, and their salaries have not kept up with the kinds of money these studios are making. That's what's at the heart of this writer's strike, even as we speak here in Los Angeles, California. When we come forward, speaking of the media, I want to talk expressly about the media and get Professor Schultz's take on that. It seems to me that the media has a role to play in this because the media is always writing these stories and putting them on the cover of magazines and basically idolizing the rich in this country. There used to be in our newspapers a page called the labor page. There's no longer a labor page. It's just the business page. There are business magazines, a plethora of them. But there are no workers magazines. There is no workers page in the newspaper. Even the media is in on this, advancing the narrative that the rich matter more than the rest of us. I digress for the moment. We'll continue when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580 is an intervention. When we come forward, includes you. KBLA Talk 1580, turning pain into power.
Tina Turner's hometown to build a statue in her honor. Maisha Cairo here with your K-Black Minute News. On May 24, news spread of the death of the queen of rock and roll, Tina Turner, who died at 83 years old. Turner's representatives say she died of natural causes after long illness. The mayor of Tina's hometown has since revealed plans to build a statue in honor of Turner. Bill Rawls Jr., mayor of Brownsville, reveals his hope to have the sculpture placed in Heritage Park near the high school Tina attended as a teenager. She was born in the same town in 1939. Rest in peace to the queen of rock and roll, Tina Turner. I'm Maisha Cairo for KBLA Talk 1580, and that's your K-Black Minute News.
Have you faced discrimination in Los Angeles? The City of LA Civil Rights Department can help. They investigate private sector discrimination in LA City in commerce, education, employment, and housing. If you're facing discrimination, submit a complaint online for free at laisforeveryone.com. That's laisforeveryone.com or call 213-978-1845.
Hi, it's Dominique DePrima from KBLA Talk 1580. It's going down on Juneteenth weekend, Saturday, June 17th at 11 a.m. for the Ribbon Cutting and Street Festival for the New Orleans corridor in Los Angeles. You know it. It's about time this important part of our story, our culture, was recognized by LA. Join Mayor Karen Bass, New Orleans Mayor LaToya Cantrell, Councilwoman Heather Hutt, and Grammy Award-winning musicians Irvin Mayfield, Terrace Martin, and 1,500 or Nothing for an amazing celebration. Go to NOLA2LAtickets.org to claim your free ticket. That's NOLA2LAtickets.org. I'll be your MC and I will see you there. Saturday, June 17th at 11 a.m. It's the New Orleans corridor in LA for Juneteenth 2023.
You're listening to Tavis Smiley, recipient of the highest honor in the talk radio industry, the coveted Freedom of Speech Award at Talkers 2023. Let's get back to more of Tavis right now on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Tavis Smiley. He's David Schultz, professor at Hamline University in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Honored to have him on as we talk about this provocative piece that he authored called 10 Men, $1 Trillion, and the Personalization of American Capitalism. Let me go straight to the media, Professor Schultz. You heard me say a moment ago that the media is in on this because they are the ones who idolize in print, on television, everywhere you look. There are always stories about the rich in this country. What's your indictment of the media in this regard?
Well, first off, we have to remember the fact that the media is oftentimes owned by some of these really rich people, and we've got they're basically they're PR arms of them. I point out to my students that we've got basically 5 big media conglomerates that control over 90% vertically and horizontally, of let's say, the information and the media in the United States. And when you start to look at some of these really big corporations, the way I describe it is to say that, do you think, for example, that somebody like Comcast is going to report, or Times Warner is going to report stories about what? About bad behavior within their own organization? Or I used to point out at one point, when was it General Electric used to own was it NBC? Mm-hmm. I said, do you think General Electric is going to is going to have as a lead story, General Electric is polluting the Hudson River? God, no, they're not going to do stuff like that. To a large extent, corporate media has become what? A corporate communications wing of rich, powerful corporations. And again, as I point out, and I argue this in a different context here, is that we want to hope the media is going to perform what I call the First Amendment function. That is what? Provide the information we need to be able to make good decisions. We're hoping, in the classic argument, that they're going to be the watchdog, for the American people and protect them. Instead, what? They have become large major corporations in which their news gathering critical functions are compromised by the corporate imperatives of making money. Yeah. And at the end of the day, that's what's happened at this point, is that the mainstream media is not going to cover these stories. They are going to idolize the rich because what? The rich own them.
As you were talking, I thought about two things to your brilliant point. Fox News scarcely covered its settlement with Dominion voting systems. They scarcely covered that because it didn't make them look good. So it was covered. It was covered everywhere except on Fox News. No surprise there. But I also thought about to your point about the rich owning this. There's a reason these days that all these billionaires are trying to buy media properties. There's a reason Jeff Bezos owns the Washington Post. There's a reason that Elon Musk bought Twitter. There's a reason I could go down. There's a long list of them, but there are a handful of people who are intent on buying these media outlets. I assume that reality is not lost on you, Professor Schultz.
That's exactly the point here, is that Bezos, for people who don't remember, he owns Amazon, he owns Whole Foods, he owns the Washington Post. I'm trying to think of, and maybe you can help me out here, I'm trying to think of the last time I saw a story in the Washington Post critical of Amazon. And if you say to me, I can't remember it either, I think that's the right answer also. Or when was the last time the Washington Post talked about the unfair labor conditions, all kinds of problems going on in Amazon warehouses where you probably know some of the stories too, forced overtime, unsafe working conditions. No, I mean, what they do, again, if I can use a distinction, there's a difference between journalism and corporate communications. They have now become corporate communications arms at this point, and their job is what? Is to make the corporations, to make these rich people look pretty, and to spin or tell their version of the story. I was thinking when I was younger, there used to be something called labor notes that I used to subscribe to. I used to be a labor organizer, published out of, I think, Detroit or something like that. It was like 8 pages every month it came, and it would report on labor news. But that was all I could think of in recent history. I don't think there's any, unless you know of one, I don't think there's any national labor publication.
That was my point, that there used to be literally in our papers a labor page, and that's long been gone. Now all you get is business news. Again, it's pushing that narrative that make the rich richer every single day in this country. Our remaining moments with Professor David Schultz when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
A safe place to go loud. A great place for progressive politics. KBLA Talk 1580.
Follow the leader.
KBLA Talk 1580.
Follow the leader.
If you're not following KBLA Talk 1580 on all of our socials, then you're missing out. Download our app and find us us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and on the web at KBLA 1580.
That's right.
Again, you can find all of our socials at KBLA 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
By the way, if you miss any of our weekday shows in real time, you can always catch up by checking out the podcasts of your favorite shows at your leisure. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
Got your black.
Keep following the leader.
Oh my God.
Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Maisha Cairo here with a quick recap from my time at JP Morgan Chase's Advancing Black Wealth Tour. There were speakers Ian Dunlap, Damon John, Lynn Richardson, MC Light, Don Kennedy, to name a few. Take a listen to what Justin Grant, Community Development Lead at Chase's Advancing Black Pathway, let's see what he had to say.
So I'm Justin Grant. I lead community development and national partnerships for JP Morgan Chase's Advancing Black Pathway strategy. And so we're focused on strengthening the economic foundation of black communities, and we're making targeted investments in programs like the Advancing Black Wealth Tour to help us get our tools and resources out to the community to drive sustained impact over time.
So when it comes to black and brown people, it sounds like Chase is making it their personal responsibility, not only to facilitate these events, but to educate and provide resources. So Mr. Grant, I have to ask, what does wealth building look like for the individual?
It's home ownership, it's having that freedom to be able to start your own business and create jobs in your community, and it's having that long-term plan towards retirement, having that vision for what you want your life to be, and you have the resources to actually live it.
I'm Maisha Cairo. Thanks for sticking around. That was my recap from Chase's Advancing Black Wealth Tour. First stop was here in LA, and they're taking it national.
Let's unpack a little bit more with Tavis Smiley. The conversation continues right now.
Professor Schultz, I've got 3 minutes left in this conversation. I want to close by allowing you to spend as much time with that 3 minutes as you'd like. Unpacking for us what concerns you most about the impact on this experiment in democracy that the money of these billionaires allows them to move.
I'm going to start with that phrase, we the people, the first three words of the U.S. Constitution. And Thurgood Marshall, former Supreme Court Justice back in 1987, 200th anniversary of the Constitution, pointed out and said that at the time the Constitution was written, the promise of we the people was great, but hardly realized. It was we, the rich white people, who were property owners, slave owners, et cetera, et cetera. And the reason why I start with that, his argument was 200 years later, remember he's writing back at the bicentennial, he said it took a Bill of Rights, 27 amendments, a civil war, a civil rights revolution to get us somewhat closer to we the people. However, despite the progress we've made in the last 20 to 30, let's say 30 years since Thurgood Marshall wrote that, we unfortunately have gone backwards. We can point to the fact that the concentration of wealth in America is greater now than it was back in the 1970s and 1980s, that the gap between the rich and the poor is greater, that in many ways we have regressed. And the broader point I want people to understand at this point is that when we worship these 10 or 15 or 18, 17 rich people and say, gosh, that's what I want to be. Well, maybe that would be nice. But these 10 people or 17 people are keeping the rest of us down. They are super rich because they are keeping the rest of us poor. And that's the point I want us to be thinking about here, is the relationship between rich and poor, and about how, even though I talked about it being personalization, it's about, at the end of the day, the structures and institutions that are in place that enable them to stay rich.
If my hero, Dr. King, were in this conversation right now, he'd remind us that too many of us are chasing the wrong things. We're chasing success when we ought to be chasing greatness. They're not the same thing. You can be successful without ever being great, but you never be great without being successful. King put it this way: any of us can be great because any of us can serve. All it takes is a heart full of grace and a soul generated by love. Be careful about what you are chasing. Maybe so many of these people in Hollywood right now, everybody black I know wants to be a billionaire. That's the new thing, right? Everybody wants to be a billionaire. At one point, everybody wanted to have a jet. Everybody wanted to have a mansion. Now everybody wants to be on the Forbes list. Every Negro I know in Hollywood, everybody in the music business, everybody wants to be on the billionaires list. What's that all about? Kanye wanted to be on it. The Kardashians want to be on it. Everybody's trying to be on the billionaire list. Nobody chasing greatness, everybody chasing success as defined by money. I digress for the moment. His piece is called 10 Men, $1 Trillion, and the Personalization of American Capitalism. He is David Schultz, Hamline University Professor of Political Science, hailing today from Minneapolis, the home of Prince Rogers Nelson. Professor Schultz, good to have you on. All the best to you, sir.
My pleasure. Thank you. Have me on again, and thanks to the audience.
We'll do it again. Thank you, sir. Hour 2 of Tavis, Smiley after news, traffic, and sports on KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
We thank you for joining us on a Wednesday morning.